Welcome, Notre Dame fans, to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. I am Vince DeDario. I am the football analyst here at irishbreakdown.com, and we have another Irish crossover podcast for you today. And I am joined by the WSBT sports director, Darin Pritchett. He is also the voice of the Notre Dame hockey team, and we are happy to have him back on Irish crossover to talk a little Notre Dame puck. How are we doing today, Darin?
Good, Vince. Thanks for the invitation. Always appreciate the opportunity to talk a little hockey.
Absolutely, and we are in the midst of it. It is playoff time. It is conference championship or conference tournament time for the Notre Dame hockey program. The last time you and I sat down, it was February 10th. It was exactly a month ago today, which is odd. But they were just getting ready to go into the Minnesota series. And so let's kind of pick up from there, talk about kind of the rest of the way through the regular season. I know the Minnesota series didn't go too well, but after that, they really picked it up and really finished out the regular season strong.
Yeah, it was a tough stretch facing a lot of high-quality hockey teams. Minnesota, as you mentioned, shut us out back-to-back games at the Compton Family Ice Arena. And credit to Minnesota, they shut down our top line of Landon Slaggert, Graham Slaggert, and Alex Steeves. And at that point, our secondary scoring wasn't doing as much as we had hoped. You know, you fast forward, you go to Wisconsin, another top five team.
Yeah.
The Irish played really well in both games. They were up 2-0 in game one. Wisconsin's got 2 first-round draft picks on their roster at the forward position, and they're really, really good this year. They've got a good goaltender, and they came back and won 4-2. I mean, I thought we played well, and then we had a wild second game, scoring 4 goals in the third, had the lead with 30 seconds to go. They scored with the goaltender on the bench, and we ended up winning a shootout. So I thought we played good there against a high-quality team. You know, Michigan State, last place in the conference, they're struggling to score. We took advantage. We shut them out back-to-back games in East Lansing. And then last weekend, it was one of those series you really didn't know what to expect. Penn State had not played in 35 days due to COVID issues, and they actually led in both games 1-0. But I thought we played terrific, solid, connected hockey. Our defense got the puck out of the zone and started transition. And not only did that top line score, we had the secondary guys chipping in. Then all of a sudden, 5-2, 7-1 the wins over Penn State. Really took advantage of Penn State's defense in that particular series. So that was definitely something to build on, considering we had won only 3 home games all year. To sweep those 2 against Penn State, nice little boost.
Yeah.
The Big Ten tournament in our house.
Well, 12 goals in a 2-game series. And I am far from a hockey aficionado, but even I know 12 goals in 2 games is pretty impressive offensive work, no matter who you're playing. Was there just kind of a different feel from this Notre Dame offense in that game?
Well, first off, the power play's been a lot better lately. We started 4 for 40 this year, and I would say probably the last month and a half we're up around probably 30% efficiency, so that's a huge, huge bonus. That's been a big factor for us. I think puck possession is the key. Jeff Jackson stresses that. There's kind of a national perception, Vince, and I don't know why this is the case. But if you listen to a national broadcast sometimes of a Notre Dame hockey game, they act like Notre Dame's a defensive team. That's never really been the case. The problem is we always have goals against averages that are very, very good, so it seems like we're a defensive team. But Jeff will tell you any day of the week he is a puck possession coach, because, Vince, this is pretty simple, just like in football.
Right.
It's hard for the other team to score on offense when they don't have the football. Well, in hockey, if you keep the possession – if you cycle the puck in your zone, you control the puck, the other team is not going to score because they're playing defense the whole time. And I think that's something we did extremely well last weekend against Penn State, who is a really good offensive team. But when you don't have the puck, it's really difficult to score. So I think puck possession has come a long way in improving our offense and at the same time improved our defense.
One of the bugaboos that we talked about the last time we sat down was the difference in home record versus away record. And they're still 5-10-1 at home, 9-2-1 on the road to finish out the season. And you mentioned how important it was to get those last 2 games against Penn State at home and in the dominating fashion of which they did. Do you think they've kind of put that in the back seat at this point? The issues that they've had at home, and because obviously the Big Ten tournament is going to be housed at Compton Family Ice Arena.
I've asked a couple of the players when I've had them on Sports Beat, and I've asked Coach Jackson, and they all kind of say the same thing. It's baffling why we struggled this year at home. Jeff made the comment this week, Coach Jackson, I should say, that he doesn't notice not having fans on the road, but he notices not having fans at home.
Sure.
Oftentimes, the home crowd can affect the officiating. It can affect the opposition. It can give the home team a boost. So he really believes that's something that has been missing for his team, that little boost that the 5,000 fans who come to home games provide his hockey team. Otherwise, special teams, we've been a whole lot better on the road than at home. We had not given up a power play goal on the road until Wisconsin. And the offense on the power play has been a whole lot better on the road. So, there's a factor there too, Vince. When you're in the minus goal category on special teams at home, it's very difficult to win. Special teams is a big difference maker this time of the year, and it's been a difference maker for us home and away this year.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And, if we're relaying it to football, when you're giving up touchdowns and you're doing things on special teams, that affects the offense and the defense, right? So it's a very similar situation there. I want to ask, I guess. Well, let me back up. You talked about the fact that there's no fans at home games, etc. I think we heard that the NCAA tournament for basketball is going to allow some fans in the building. I believe that's what I heard. Any chance there's going to be any fans for the Big Ten tournament, or is that still going to be zero?
I'm assuming it's going to be zero. And from what I understand, Vince, and I hope I'm right on this, with hockey being in the Big Ten and Notre Dame's other sports in the ACC, the conferences are having a lot of say in what's going on.
Gotcha.
And did not allow any hockey fans in any buildings this year. Now, I know basketball late in the year, the students got in and caused a little ruckus at Purcell Pavilion for no reason, but I don't believe that's going to happen. I will say there were a couple of games this year over break in which some student athletes for Notre Dame were allowed into the hockey game and sat in the old student section, but I have not heard that would be the case. And so I'm assuming it's going to be a quiet building. Maybe they'll let family members in again. I have not, but otherwise they have not sold any tickets to the public.
Okay. I just wanted to double check. It just seems like everybody's different right now, whether they're letting fans in, whether they're not. Who knows? Excuse me. So let me ask you some big picture questions about the season. I'll talk from Darin Pritchett's standpoint. Okay. Your expectations going into this season with everything that was swirling, everything that was going on, but your expectations going in, were they met? Were they exceeded? Where is this team based on where you thought that they would be at this point?
Gosh, Vince, I was just hoping we were going to play, and I was hoping we would get in most of the games, and a lot of credit to the Notre Dame players, the staff, the administration. We didn't have a pause.
I was going to say, there was no pause for hockey.
Yeah. I mean, there were a couple of moments where they had to have caution for players, with quarantining and contact tracing and that type of stuff. But otherwise, I can't believe we played every game. And again, all credit to the administration, the staff, and the players for buying in to all this and making it all happen. I guess from on the ice, Notre Dame was a 500 team last year. We lost some pretty key seniors from last year's team. So I was hoping maybe we would be a team that would finish, I think, on the high end, third place in the Big Ten. It just felt like Wisconsin and Minnesota were going to be better than everybody, and that kind of panned out. Michigan's got a ton of young freshmen that are their best players. So they're maybe ahead of schedule. They got third. We finished fourth. That's probably just about right. So when you lose some high-end players from last year's hockey team, it's a big change. So, I guess we're probably right close to where I thought we would be. I know Jeff wanted to get the goal scoring up to 3 a game, and we're not there as of yet, but we're a whole lot better when we were at the start of the year. But I would say the progress we have made in the second half, and defenseman Spencer Stasny, who is a part of our top defensive pairing, came on Sports Beat and already said, I'm coming back next year. Now, when you're a junior in hockey, NHL teams get jumpy, and sometimes they like to grab those guys and bring them into their organization. He's a junior, and he said, I came to Notre Dame to play hockey and get an education. So having Spencer back, that is huge. We'll see if Alex Steves comes back. He's a junior that is undrafted at this time, but he is tied for 4th in the country in goals with 15. He's 6th in the country in points with 31. So he has a decision to make. We don't know what the minors are going to look like next year.
Sure.
But if he comes back, and I would think pretty much everybody else would come back, and then what appears to be a really good freshman group coming in, Sasha Pastajob is a high-end forward in the developmental program that'll be coming in next year. His brothers have played for and played for Michigan at the current time. I would think my expectations will be extremely high for next year. There's no reason why this team might not be a top 10 team next year. But this year, I kind of think we are who we are, but there have been players that have exceeded my expectation. Graham Slaggert has been fantastic from an offensive standpoint. He's got 25 points, a career high. He's a playmaker setting up Alex Steves. So guys like that have taken their games to a higher level. That leads me to raise my expectations for next season.
What has the goaltending been like this season? Because Notre Dame has ridden their goaltenders the last few years as far as them being high echelon guys. But there was a bit of a turnover this year. So what's the goaltending been like?
Well, Dylan St. Cyr's been a part of this program for 5 years. He's been kind of waiting his turn. I think when Cale Morris came back for his 3rd year, that was maybe his 4th year was a bit of a surprise, since he had played so well, and we figured there might be some pro offers, and there were, but none that suited Cale. So he came back. So that pushed St. Cyr back a year. He stuck with it, to his credit. He's hung around. Early in the year, he was splitting time with sophomore Ryan Bischel. But Bischel got hurt, and St. Cyr took advantage of it. I think he started, I want to say 14 of the last 15 games now. His save percentage is around .930. Early in the year was around .895, .890. So that is a huge improvement. So Dylan has really come on strong, and sometimes you gain more confidence. You get into a rhythm when you play more. When you're playing every other, sometimes it gets a little more difficult. But credit to him. He's been really good, and he's maybe one of the big reasons why our penalty kill has gotten better. The old saying is sometimes your best penalty kill player needs to be your goaltender to save the day, and he's been outstanding coming down the stretch. And we haven't seen a whole lot of Ryan because St. Cyr has been locked in, but he's got a lot of potential down the road for this team. But yeah, Dylan has been really, really good, and I credit him for being awfully patient. We see in college football where people get jumpy and transfer right away. He had every reason to maybe do that. He stuck with it, and credit to him. It's really paying off for him and the team now.
So let's talk about Notre Dame's next opponent. That is Penn State. It was also their last opponent. And you talked about how big of a series that Penn State series was. Finishing off the regular season at home. They get Penn State again on Sunday. That's a high noon puck drop there, I believe. And talk about that game a little bit, and then we'll talk about Notre Dame's path through the Big Ten tournament.
Well, we played Penn State 4 times in the regular season. Oddly enough, the last 4 games Penn State has played are all against Notre Dame. So we bookmark the 35-day layoff they had due to COVID issues. And in Happy Valley, the teams were very, very even. Both teams led in the 3rd period. Both teams lost those leads. The games went into overtime, and the team trailing in the 3rd ended up winning the game.
Wow.
Overtime. We were up 1-0 in game 1. They tied it, won it in overtime, and then we were down 2-1 in game 2. And I believe it was Colin Tyson that tied it, and defenseman Spencer Stasny won it in overtime. So those were 2 very competitive games, very even games. Not the case. I'm not taking anything away from what Notre Dame accomplished. You wonder, the layoff, fatigue, game legs, how much of a factor was that? Because we really put them away in the 3rd period of both games, and maybe fatigue was a factor. So I'm going to respect them and say that they're going to be a different hockey team on Sunday with another week of practice, another week of getting their legs back. But I will say this, they were really banged up in game 2 last week, and their best defenseman, Clayton Phillips, blocked a shot, it looked like, with his hand, and he dropped his glove and his stick and skated quickly to the locker room and never came back. He's their best defenseman. He's a Penguins draft pick. So I don't know his status, but that's important. I think there might have been at least one of the defensemen I didn't see late in the hockey game. They had a forward playing defense late in the hockey game, and they started the game with 7 defensemen. So I'm not sure of their injury status, but they are still a pretty good offensive club. It maybe didn't show last weekend. Notre Dame had the possession of the puck, and they played really well in their end, so that's a huge positive. But I'm just going to kind of say Notre Dame beat them last weekend, but out of respect to I know what Penn State has, let's see how they are now a week removed from back into game action and another week removed from all the COVID issues they had, for 35 days as they didn't play a game in the month of February.
Now, what does Notre Dame's path look like in the Big Ten tournament? Who would they play in the next round? How far do you see them going? Kind of put your prediction hat on as much as you can.
Sure. Well, if they win against Penn State, they would more than likely have to beat 2 top 7 teams to win the Big Ten tournament championship. With the way the bracket's set up this year, it's just single elimination throughout the whole tournament. Normally the quarterfinals is best of 3. It's just one game this year.
Yeah.
If you beat Penn State, you come back Monday at 4:30, and you would take on the regular season champion, Wisconsin, who Wisconsin swept us at home the first 2 games of the year. And then, as we talked about earlier, we had a loss and a tie against Wisconsin at the Kohl Center. So, we're 0-3-1 against Wisconsin so far this year. So, obviously, that would be a challenge. And if you get by Wisconsin, best guess, you're probably going to get one of the 2 other top 10 teams in the country from the Big Ten, the 2 seed Minnesota and the 3 seed Michigan. Those series were bizarre this year. The visiting team in those 2 series were 8-0.
Oh, wow.
They went 2-0 at Minnesota, 2-0 at Michigan, and those 2 teams swept us at home. So, bottom line is, Vince, Notre Dame has proved they can beat any great team this year. They have done so. So anything is possible with the way they played the last month. Yeah, I think they could go on a run and do some damage, but you get by Penn State, you're going to have to beat more than likely 2 elite hockey teams to gain the automatic berth into the NCAA tournament and also win the program's 3rd Big Ten tournament championship.
So with Notre Dame being 12-2 overall this season, what does it look like their chances of getting into the NCAA tournament? Is it a situation where they win 2 games, they got a shot, or do they have to win the Big Ten tournament to get in?
I can only guess because I asked this question recently. So what is the NCAA going to do in terms of deciding who makes the tournament? Because we have this computer formula, the pairwise,
right?
The committee lives off of throughout the automatic burst into the NCAA tournament. And it was explained to me that the pairwise is not usable this year because it always factors in non-conference games. Well, we only had a few of those across the country this year. So from what I'm told, the pairwise is not usable here. So I really don't know, honestly, what the criteria is. The person I asked wasn't sure, and they're very knowledgeable in college hockey. So my best guess is, Vince, they have to win the tournament to go to the big dance. So they're going to have to win 3 in a row to get to the NCAA tournament. I can't imagine they would make it. But then again, they're in a really good conference with 3 top 10 teams. I'm not going to say anything's not possible, but my best guess is they're going to have to win the NCAA or the Big Ten tournament to go to the NCAA tournament.
And with the NCAA tournament, have you heard how they're going to do that? Is there going to be regional sites? I mean, with everything up in the air, and I mean, what have you heard about the NCAA tournament? How they're going to do that?
They have not made any adjustments. The last I've heard is we're going to have regionals, which I'm really surprised if you're going to put the NCAA basketball tournament in a bubble.
Right.
I'm really surprised you would send hockey teams all across the country. The old days, Vince, the better seeded teams hosted NCAA tournament games, and it makes a heck of a lot of sense on so many levels. From a health standpoint, at least you got one less team traveling.
Sure.
And also, the regional sites are empty most of the time. A lot of places you go, there are no fans there. The biggest games of the year should have the biggest crowds. So it's been a disappointment a lot of times going to regional sites where there's nobody there. There's no excitement. It should be exciting for the players, there's a lot of reasons to get rid of the regional sites, but we have not done so as of yet. But if there's ever a year to try something different, I would think this would be the one.
Well, I was just going to say, why not this year? I mean, that seems you've got, like you said, one less team traveling, so it's one less team that is going to have to be out of their bubble. And it would be the team that everybody would assume would hopefully move on. So you're keeping that team protected, and you have fans. I mean, maybe, hopefully, right?
But I just look at it this way. If you host the NCAA tournament in venues that have hosted college hockey games already this year, there is a very effective plan in place to handle teams in the midst of a pandemic in terms of getting everything clean. When I go to the Compton for a hockey game, before the game, you always see those little sprayers being used on the benches, and they're cleaning everything on both benches. So there's a plan in place that has been effective all year.
Right.
I'm not saying the regional sites can't do the same thing. Don't get me wrong, but you've got effective plans already in place with those college venues. So it would seem like a pretty good decision just to have those sites host those particular games. And honestly, Vince, you could even do this. If you got 4 teams in a regional, the 1 and the 2 seeds could host the regional semifinals, and you could have the other teams come in. Now, that's going to cause maybe more travel down the line, but there's just a lot of different ways you could go about this. But
yeah,
right now, as far as I know, we're going regional sites.
Okay. Now, let's pretend the season is over and we have moved into the offseason for Notre Dame hockey. And you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to hear your thoughts on what the offseason could potentially hold. We talk about, the basketball team and what they missed out not having summer and fall and being able to scrimmage with each other, et cetera. What is a normal, quote unquote, what does a normal offseason look like for a college hockey program? Are they all together? Or are they out doing, with their other hockey teams, et cetera?
I think in the summertime, they do a lot of things on their own. They get into weight rooms, they get on ice and do their individual work. I know late in the summer toward the fall, everybody starts coming back and they start working out together. Hockey's kind of strange. You can't work out as a group until very late in the process. I think it's like groups of 4 or something. You can work out together. So it's a little different than most. It's not like a basketball player can pick up a basketball, find a hoop, and find ice, which can be challenging for a lot of people. But they're really good about doing their individual work as far as I know. They get together late in the summer, early in the fall, and start working out. Tony Rolinski is the greatest strength and conditioning coach in the country, and he always gets these guys ready to go. So, yeah, it's a little different process for hockey. And you got 8 guys that have been drafted, and some other guys have the capabilities of being professional hockey players. With Stasny coming back, that's a great starting point for next year for the defense. And, again, it'll all come down to probably if Steves comes back. If he does, you've got a heck of a nucleus coming back from last year's hockey team, and then you add in a really good freshman class, and hey, we'll have some fun next year.
Yeah, there's no question. What do you think overall? And obviously, you're not inside every one of those programs, but you kind of know what those teams have and what they might be bringing back to an extent. Where do you see Notre Dame stacking up in the Big Ten?
Well, I would say Wisconsin would take a step back, losing 2 first-round picks. Dylan Holloway is an Oiler draft pick, and Cole Caulfield's the top scorer in the country. He'll go to the Montreal Canadiens. They still have a very talented roster, but that's 2 really, really high-end players going to professional hockey. So they could still be really good, but I would have to think they will come back a tad bit. Michigan could be the Wisconsin of next year because their top players are all freshmen at the forward position, so another year of experience. They could blow up into something really, really good. Minnesota is always going to be good. They are just a program that normally gets a lot of the top-end Minnesota kids, although we have taken a lot of good players from them through the years. So I would say Notre Dame would have a good chance to be in the top 3. Out of respect to what Michigan has coming back, they're going to be awfully good. So if I had to guess, Michigan and Minnesota and Notre Dame would be your top 3 contenders. And again, Wisconsin's got a lot coming back. I don't want to diminish that, but boy, that's a lot of good players lost to pro hockey with those guys going pro after this year.
Well, that's excitement for the future of Notre Dame hockey, but the best part is this season's not over yet. They still have an opportunity to make some noise in the Big Ten tournament. And that game is Sunday at noon against Penn State. And you can hear all of the action on 99 Live 99.9 on the radio.
Actually,
what's that?
Z94.3 FM.
I apologize.
Okay.
I getting them all mixed around.
We have 1 million stations, and for people outside the South Bend area, they can go to UND.com and get the Notre Dame radio call as well.
Yeah, so make sure you tune in and hear Darin taking the Notre Dame hockey team and hopefully to a victory on Sunday at noon. And then if they win, as you said, 4:30 on Monday.
In the semifinals against Wisconsin.
Okay, and all those games are at the Compton Family Ice Arena. So even though it hasn't been great to Notre Dame, hopefully hosting the tournament will be something that propels them forward, no question. So we'll all be rooting on the Notre Dame hockey team. Darin, thank you again for sitting down and talking a little bit of Notre Dame hockey. We really appreciate it.
Anytime. Always appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So that is Darin Pritchett. He's the voice of the Notre Dame hockey team. He's also the sports director over at WSBT, and you can catch him on Sports Beat every weekday from 4 to 7 o'clock, except on Monday because Notre Dame's going to win on Sunday. So he'll be calling a hockey game on Monday. So
yeah, I'm not sure who's hosting the show on Monday if that happens. So
we're going to flip a coin.
Send an application to Vince, and you might be eligible.
Yeah, that's right. We'll figure it out, though. We'll figure it out. But again, thanks for joining us on the Irish Crossover Notre Dame Hockey Edition. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button as well. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcasting station, make sure you subscribe so that you get all the latest podcasts downloaded straight to your device. And of course, check out irishbreakdown.com because there's all kinds of good stuff there. There was a Notre Dame football commit today, so make sure you go check out all the information on that. And then, of course, listen to Sports Beat tonight, 4 to 7 on 96.1 FM, WSBT, because we'll be breaking it all down for you. And I'm sure we'll be talking a little Notre Dame hockey as well. So for Darin Pritchett, the voice of the Notre Dame hockey team, I am Vince DeDario. Thank you for joining us on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.